My name's Nick, and I'm super excited to have you tuning in with us again. If you've watched any of our past videos, I've referenced my cat Jade. So this is my cat Jade for all of you to see, the little chubbers that she is. She's not very happy to be held right now, so I'm going to go ahead and put her down before she eats my face. She'll probably go sit with Elise, who's manning our camera today. So if you hear her meow or jump around, that's why, because she's in love with my wife more than me. So she'll hang out with her. But thank you again for joining us. We are in our series called The Parable of the Lost Son. And we talked about this a little bit last week. Parable is just a fancy way of saying story. And you might actually know this story under a different name, the parable of the prodigal son. And prodigal and lost you can kind of use interchangeably. And so we just chose to go with the lost son for this story. And last week we looked at the younger son. And each week, for this week and next week, we're going to look at key characters from the story. Last week it was the younger son. We looked at how he allowed for his desires to dictate how he engaged with those around him. And the younger son, his story was actually really kind of sad. It was a young son who went to his father and pretty much said, "Hey Dad, I wish you were dead. Give me my inheritance. I don't deserve, but give it to me anyway." And he went out and he squandered it all. He went out and did whatever he wanted. And ended up leaving him just isolated and alone. He came back and he groveled at his dad's feet saying, "Hey, I'm not even worthy to be called your son. Make me a hired servant." And his dad's like, "No, you're still my son." And he loved him and brought him back. And it was a beautiful story of what God does within our lives, how he welcomes anybody, regardless of their past or their mistakes, and brings them into his family. Today we're going to talk about the older son. And I think the older son is somebody that we can probably identify with, much like last week how many of us could identify with the younger son. And what we're going to look at today is kind of this understanding that if we have these expectations for ourselves and others that aren't attainable, it's ultimately going to leave us unhappy and just alone and broken and frustrated. And we'll talk through that here in a little bit. But before we even get to that, let me ask you a question. Have you got any expectations? I mean, kind of like a dumb question. Like, of course we do, right? I mean, we all have expectations. But have you ever had perhaps expectations that something was going to be a certain way, but then in reality it wasn't? Let me give you an example. My first apartment that I ever got to live in on my own, I had these lofty expectations that it would be beautiful, right? It would be this amazing apartment that you would love to be in. It wouldn't have to be huge, but like everybody would think it was the coolest, kind of like hipstery vibe, like this urban downtown loft type of feel. Be coolly decorated. I don't know why I thought it would be coolly decorated. I am not a good decorator, so I don't know what I was thinking. But I had these great expectations for what it was going to be. Well, my first apartment that I was going to get for myself was actually going to be in the town where I was pastoring at the time. The town was 45 minutes from where I was living with my parents, and I was like, well, it makes sense for me to be in the community I'm pastoring, so I'm going to look to find an apartment. So I asked some of my churchgoers, I was like, "Hey, do you guys have any leads on some cool apartments?" And they're like, "Well, let's do some digging and we'll figure it out." And so sure enough, the next week I came back and they were like, "Hey, we found an apartment." And they said, "Here's how much it costs." I'm like, wow, for that cost, this has to be a great apartment, because it's kind of expensive for what they were saying. It's a single person apartment, but they're like, you know, it's really cool. It's behind the local flower shop right off of Main Street in this small town. You'll love it. So I said, let's go check it out. So I went to check it out. And it's kind of like a day like how this past Tuesday was. Kind of dreary, rainy, overcast. Like you weren't getting great lighting in the apartment. And I was like, okay, you know, from what I can tell, it's not bad. It may not be this cool urban lofty type environment, but it's not bad. And so I went ahead and I signed the lease. And I still had these lofty expectations that, you know what, once I get in, once I get all my items in there, I move in, and I kind of spruce it up a little bit, this is going to be amazing. Well, move-in day came. And I won't forget this. You know, we get ready to go in and we're like, okay, we're going to clean the place ourselves, make sure that it looks good. And so I had some people helping me from my church. My parents were there. And we brought a rug doctor. If you don't know what a rug doctor is, it's like this carpet steamer. And the idea is it uses hot water and soap to pull out all the deep dirt and grime that's in the carpet. And for most homes, you run it once or twice and you get up all the dirt and grime, and it's great. I ran it 10 times in the living room alone. And I was still picking up enough dirt and grime that the wastewater was still black and silt-filled. It was gross. But then it gets better. In the bedroom, we realized the bedroom was actually on a slant. Like if I put a ball on the floor by my bed, it would roll all the way into the far corner. Like that's how bad the slant was. So we actually had to jack up the bed on the one side to make sure that I would sleep appropriately and not get like a messed up back. Then the kitchen, we realized the linoleum flooring actually didn't go all the way to the wall. There's actually about an inch gap from the wall to where the linoleum was ending and curling up on itself. But then the worst thing was, in the bathroom, one of my parishioners, her husband was a plumber. And she's like, hey, I'm going to take care of the sink and the bathtub for you. I'll make sure the drains are clear. The amount of dark, grimy hair that came out of those drains would be enough to cover my cat 3 times over. It was disgusting. Even to this day, I think about that, I start like having that involuntary gag reflex, you know? But it was like I had these lofty expectations and they just fell flat. And that's where the older son is. He had these expectations for himself and for others, and ultimately they just fell flat. And so I want to look at that a little bit, to look at some insights we can pull from his story, and then say, okay, what does this actually mean for us in our context? So check this out. In Luke 15, beginning in verse 25, we read this. So meanwhile, the older son was in the field, and when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants, and he asked him, hey, what's going on? And the servant replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry, and he refused to go inside. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But the older brother answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never even gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes come home, you killed the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he's found. This is a really insightful part of the story. We know the dad has 2 sons, the younger son and the older son. And we know the older son, in accordance with this custom during this time period, he was the heir to everything his father had. But because his father operated a little bit differently, he gave his younger brother some of that inheritance, and he went and he squandered it. But what we see about this is the older brother is at home still when the younger brother comes home. The older brother's out, he's working in the fields, he's doing what he's supposed to, he's taking care of his dad's stuff, and he comes home, and he finds out that his brother has returned. And what we see is this, is that the older son asks a question of the servant with ulterior motives. I mean, think about this. He comes home, okay, and it's like any of us. Like, you come home from work, you come home from school, back when we could do those things, right? And you come home, and if you heard a party going on, right, if you heard music and dancing and celebration happening, you would want to go in and check it out, right? And you could probably tell from the type of noise coming out what type of party it was, right? Birthday party, like baby shower, Christmas party, anniversary, like you could tell what type of party it was, right? And the older brother, though, he comes in, and we read this in verses 25 and 26. While he was out in the field, he came near the house, and he heard music and dancing. So he called over one of the servants and asked, hey, what's going on? Now, here's what he's doing. And I want you to kind of think about this like in our context and think if we ever do this. He comes home, and he knows what's going on. But here's the thing. He wants to get ammunition. You ever do that? Like, you kind of know what's going on, but you want to make sure you've got your deck fully stacked before you engage with the problem. Like, he knows that his brother's come home. He's hearing the celebration. He's hearing the dancing, the laughing. Everybody's excited that he's home. And he goes, oh, hey, wait, there's one of my servants who's probably doing something for his dad. And he's like, hey, come here. What's going on? And he's like, hey, your brother's home, is what he tells him. He's like, your brother has come home and your dad's killed the fattened calf for him. And the brother, he gets all sort of bent out of shape. And what he was doing is he was looking to build up his arsenal to accuse people for what they're doing. So he's not asking a question because he doesn't know. He's asking the question to get ammunition to support his claim. So he comes with these ulterior motives. And I think sometimes we do this too. Sometimes we come into a situation and we know what's happening, we know what's going on, but we're just looking to stack the deck in our favor. We want to make sure that we have all the things to make sure that we are right, we are correct, that our point of view is the right point of view. But ultimately, when you do that, what you're doing is you're looking for faults in other people. That's what you're doing. When you're getting that ammunition, you're looking to elevate yourself and to look for faults in other people. And what happens when you do that, though, is ultimately you're going to feel frustrated, stressed out, jealous, and unhappy because it doesn't feel good. If you're just getting like dirt on other people, you don't feel great about it. And at the end, like if you end up like winning, so to speak, your case, you don't feel great because you had to do all this other stuff to make sure that you won. In fact, look at these verses that show us how the older son felt. He became angry and he refused to go into the party. Grade A temper tantrum, right? Wah, daddy's welcoming my brother home, so I'm not going to go inside. Wah, I'm going to stand outside. If I was his dad, I would have left him out there. But the dad says, oh my gosh, like there's my older son. So he goes out to see him and he pleads with him, come on inside. Come on and celebrate with us. But the older son, he answers his father and listen to what he says. Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and I never disobeyed your orders. But you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who squandered your property with prostitutes came in, you killed the fattened calf for him? I think the older son does what a lot of us do in this context, right? Like if we're trying to get our way, we end up getting a little bit frustrated. We may not throw a temper tantrum like he does, but we got to get frustrated and people know that we're frustrated, right? And the dad comes out and he's like, hey, come on in. We want to celebrate. We want you to be a part of it. And the son's like, look. And man, if I did that to my parents, like if I got in my parents' faces was like, look, I probably would not be sitting here today. Okay? Like it's just the reality. So he's already coming off as like this arrogant and this cocky young son who's trying to tell his dad what's up. And he's like, look, I've been slaving away for you all these years and I've never disobeyed you and you've not even given me a goat. And you're like, chill out, dude, it's a goat, right? But like what he's saying, he's like, look, I've worked my butt off for you. I've done all this and you've never given me anything and you give this son all this stuff. So he comes at his dad with one argument. You don't care about me. I've done everything for you. How dare you do this? But then he throws his younger brother under the bus, right? And don't we do that sometimes? Like in an argument when we're like, oh, I got my ammunition. Let me throw it in. Even though it might not relate to my first argument. Like his first argument is like, Dad, like you haven't blessed me. Even though I've worked all these years for you. But then the second one is, and you know what? I'm going to prove to you how bad of a dad you are because you let the younger son, you let my younger brother take his inheritance, which he shouldn't have had. He squandered it on prostitutes, Dad, and then you give him the fattened calf? What kind of father are you? So it's not just that he's saying, Dad, like you don't love me. He's now attacking the integrity of his father. It's like this straw man argument where he just brings in more stuff to muddy the waters. And he's just so angry and so frustrated that now he started attacking his dad. And I mean, at this point, man, if I was his dad, I would have kicked him to the curb. I would have been like, hey, like, you don't deserve anything. It's my stuff. Like, how dare you tell me how to respond to my family? How dare you tell me what to do with my money and my inheritance for you? And the older brother, he just keeps accusing his dad. And thankfully, this story isn't written about my response. It's written about God's. Because check out how God responds in this moment. God responds faithfully, regardless of the actions of the older son, regardless of our action. What we need to understand is that God's reaction to our actions doesn't change if we are horrible people. God doesn't look at what we do and go, well, tough luck, you lose out, kid. Just like the father didn't do that to his son. The father had promised that he would give an inheritance to his son, and he was faithful to that. He was still going to do that. In fact, look at what we read here in verses 31 through 32. The father replies to his son, he says, my son, you are always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead, but now he is alive again. He was lost and now he is found. The father addresses both arguments from the older son. The older son, the first one was like, I've slaved away for you. You've given me nothing. And the father goes, don't you get it? Don't you get it? You've always been with me. And everything that is mine is yours. He's telling the son, he goes, look, you don't understand. You think I have to give it to you. Like, I've already given you everything. It's already there for you to take. It's yours. Why are you demanding it when it's already been given to you? I've given you everything you need. And like, why are you demanding I keep giving it to you when it's already there? And the second argument that the older brother brought was this. Your younger son went out and he spent money on prostitutes and whores and he squandered everything. How dare you allow that son back in your home. And he goes, hang on. He goes, don't you get it? Your baby brother, your brother, family, the thing that ties us all together and makes us unified. We thought he was dead. We thought we had lost this kid to the world. And he came home. Your baby brother's home. My son is home. He's alive again. Do you understand? Like, this is cause for celebration. We're not taking anything away from you. We're not getting rid of your inheritance. We're simply celebrating that he's home. And he's like, you have to understand. You don't have to demand anything from me. It's all here for you. And we are just celebrating that we have a family again. In the midst of this brother having these lofty expectations and allowing those expectations to dictate how he engages with others, how he looks to have the upper hand in every circumstance, how he looks to find fault in others. And the father comes in and says, look, regardless of how you've responded, I'm still faithful. I still love you. I still love your brother. And I will always love you and care for you because all of this is yours. And so as we look at this, I think there's a couple things that we should understand about who we are. And the first is this, is that we shouldn't look to elevate ourselves or undermine others because of our expectations. As followers of Jesus, I think sometimes we get it in our minds that we deserve, that we have these expectations that we are going to get our just desserts, that we're going to get all the good stuff. And it's like, whoa, hang on. If we come in looking for that, we've elevated ourselves and put ourselves in this platform of pride. We think that we deserve something, that it's rightfully ours. And God's going, no, don't you get it? I gave it to you. You didn't deserve it. I gave it to you. That older son didn't deserve an inheritance. His dad gave it to him. And if we look to undermine others, if we're constantly looking to find fault in others, man, we are going to be some really sad and upset people. It's going to destroy you from the inside out, just like it did this brother. He came, he was so upset. He found so many faults with his brother. It kept him from engaging with a family, with a father who loved him, who cared about him. And so what we need to understand then is that we need to be humble, and we need to look to love others the way that the Father loves. Folks, we're not called to be people who elevate ourselves. We're supposed to live in light of what God has done for us, which really makes us humble, because we realize how much we didn't deserve what God did for us. We realize how we don't have any expectations because, frankly, we didn't deserve it to begin with, and God just goes, here, it's yours. God doesn't look at our mess-ups, he doesn't look at our mistakes, and he pull away the promise from us. No, in fact, he's faithful, and he continues to give to us. He just challenges us to reflect that, to love others as he does, to look to be humble as he is humble. So let me encourage you today to think through this a little bit, to say, man, do I identify with this brother at all? Do I reflect this at all to the people around me? And consider having conversations about this parable with your family, your friends, over Zoom with your small group, whatever it may look like, and digging deep into this. And what I want to do is I just want to pray for you guys. I miss you guys so much. I can't wait until we meet again. And I know we just heard that the stay at home is extended a little bit further into May. And I keep just hoping and praying that someday soon we'll be able to gather again, because I miss you guys. I miss being in community. But let me encourage you to keep diving into whatever community looks like for you. If it's over Zoom, over Skype, over FaceTime, phone calls, writing letters, whatever that is, let me encourage you to engage with the community around you. So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to end our time for today. Thanks for tuning in, but let's pray together. Awesome God, thank you so much that you are a God who is faithful, even in the midst of us having horrible expectations and letting those expectations drive us. Let us be people who don't seek to have our own expectations, but seek to be people who love others and are humble as you are humble, because that's what you've called us to. Thank you for the gifts that you've given to us, even when we didn't deserve them, and help us to honor you with those each and every day. And we pray this in your name. Amen. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you again. Have a great day.